Hey, this is Stephen Platinum, your friend in Wrestling with Platinum against Impact Wrestling. This is from September 2nd, 2021, and they opened with a tribute to Daffney and their tragic passing. Um, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm ashamed to say my first reaction was to be mad. Now, I know Impact Wrestling, we're looking at a completely different group of people that was there, especially when you look at who's in charge now. No, very little to no resemblance to who was there in TNA when Daffney was being put in the ring with a lot of love and getting butchered and feeling compelled to come back, and nobody really, it just felt like a lot of people just didn't look out for her. I know this is not how show recaps generally go, but I'm going to speak on this, and I still don't know what I'm going to do. For full disclosure, maybe just devote it huge section to Daffney. It's incredible to me that not too long ago, people who know a little bit about wrestling who did it would argue with me about the difference. TNA drew 1.4 million. AEW gets like a million. But in reality, TNA was never a threat, even ideologically, in the same way that AEW is to WWE. WWE right now shouldn't even have anything resembling a peer. They're making money for nothing, right? They're just content providers at this stage in the game. And yet, they have half the news cycle. They have the goodwill of the people. And they screw up, and they've screwed up big a time or two. The Matt Hardy thing, a screw up, right? He fell off the thing, hit his head. They allowed him to keep wrestling. That was a debacle. But for the most part, the ideology of AEW appears to be one of caring. Whether it's overpaying, I'm just going to be blunt, overpaying indie guys during COVID because Tony Khan knew they didn't have a gig. And so they made them have a gig and continue to churn out that content that does seemingly nothing for them in terms of a bottom line, but everything for them in the terms of goodwill of the wrestling world. And this open the forbidden door thing where people are like, yeah, but is it drawing? But that's, I think people are missing the point of it. It's not the point, isn't it draw? Like the point is they're establishing something, that there is a wrestling world outside of the WWE that in many ways is more far-reaching, but not in every way. But, Impact putting up that picture of Daffney, yeah, it's the least you could fucking do. I'm sure they're going to hesitate about putting together like a best of Daffney because a lot of that's going to be really hard to watch in the sense that it's going to be her getting butchered, thumbtack spots, and getting crushed. She was small, man. And I'm not saying that means she shouldn't do anything, but I don't know. It means you gotta, fuck, man. The impact of today has no resemblance to the worst parts of TNA of yesteryear. Don't get me wrong. They do not resemble that at all. In fact, I said last week, and I got a huge response from people, that, it reminded me of a black box theater. But I'll tell you, at least they give a shit about what they're doing, and they give a shit about the people involved. That's very evident. Yeah. Well, shit, I'm already talking about Daffney. I'm going to talk about Daffney some more because I'm feeling it. So Daffney was the first person of note a name, if you will, that I booked, right? I opened the school in late 2001. We had our first show in Jefferson County, Georgia, in front of a huge crowd of more than 600 because they all turned out because the PE teacher was wrestling for me. Um, and then our second show was in the Globe Theater where Bill Barons and that crew used to run as well. And neither Bill nor I ever had any luck running in that fucking spot. We ran in that spot, and I mean, we had to give tickets away to get people to see it. But we had Daffney and we had Crowbar. And so the big deal was that was a big deal because they hadn't worked together since the end of WCW. So they were really happy. And Daffney was a fucking sweetheart, man. Again, we can see this Impact report's not going to be much except me talking about Daffney. But so it fucking goes. It was a good show. It set up a bunch of shit. Ace Austin is now going to be the only person taking on Christian Cage. Okay? And they did a bunch of stuff with... I mean, when you look at even the legacy of a Sue Young and a Rosemary, and all that stems from Daffney. And I think they would be the first to admit that. Right? Here, I'll run down the matches. That'll make you feel better. And then I'm just going to go back to talking about Daffney because that's what I want to talk about. So the fifth match, yeah, Ace Austin retains... against he makes it so Tommy Dreamer isn't going to make it a three-way dance. It's going to be him and Christian Cage at the next pay-per-view of some note at Victory Road, right? But not huge note. Match number 4, I'll go backwards. Chelsea Green, Matt Cardona against Rahit Raju and Shera, and at some point Raju hits Chelsea Green with a jumping knee and pins her. So they're going to continue that feud, and I thought that really worked, and the crowd really seemed to go for Chelsea Green being in this match, but then she paid the price, right, when she got caught. And after that match, Kimberly and Sue Young, and Lee says sometimes they take souls and sometimes they convert. We see Brandy Lauren in the same chilling look as Young and Lee. She's part of the trio now. Cool. But, doesn't Brandy date Shotzi Blackheart? And Shotzi Blackheart, I mean, that's Daffney all day, right? It's all these, and I'm not saying they're copying Daffney. It's not a negative. It's a positive. Like, Daffney was a different kind of person. And she got into wrestling when she was in college, right? It was just a gas. It was just a lark. And then she stayed in it, and we booked her, and she was so great. And she worked with my, at that time, girlfriend. And my girlfriend could kind of wrestle, but not really. And so they really did like kind of catfighty stuff, and that it was really enjoyable. But here's what I remember about Daffney. 2 major things about that evening. One during the show and then one after the show. I don't know if I'm going to tell the after the show story. Fuck, man. But during the show, she watched the show. Now, keep in mind, this was our second show, and it was all my students. So these guys were green as grass. And Jay Fury was having his first match against Chris Grimm, a.k.a. Phantom. And they tore it up. I just told them, go out there and steal it. And they did every fucking crazy spot. And she watched, and she was like, this match is amazing. And she was so excited. And then she goes, how long these guys have been working? I go, this is their first match. And I just remember that look on her face. And she, she was such a sweetheart. And I just went and read the email exchanges between me and her, because we tried to bring her in for Sacred Ground 2 to referee the women's match. In fact, she's on the poster. Like, I see the poster over there hanging on my wall. And there's Daffney, And, but that's when I got the plane ticket for her. And that's when she first started getting into, like, fucked up shit. I think she got into a DUI, and she started having these legal troubles that she was trying to hide from people. So this is back in 2011, 2012, around there. So it's been 9 years of just hell for her. I know it. Up and down, back and forth. Before that, I had encountered her at a Turnbuckle Championship wrestling show where she was kind of getting trained to wrestle. And she was really smart about how she was going about it, but really like wide-eyed and open to. I don't. There's so many people have great Daffney stories and great pictures with Daffney. My memories with her are something very different. And one of my favorite emails is I was just reading back the emails that she and I sent back and forth, and and one of my favorites was I had emailed her and Adam Pearce at the same time because I was asking him to cut a promo for Sacred Ground Chapter 2. And Adam Pearce did. And so the bottom of this email thread is really fun because it's like Daphne's chiming in, I'm chiming in. And then Adam, and then you have this a promo with Adam in his bathtub cutting a promo at Chip Day. And she was just like, God, this is going to be so much fun. And I always think like, if she could have made it, I wasn't worried about the money I lost on the ticket. I was flying in, and she was living in Tampa at that time. And she said, I have family in Atlanta, so you don't have to put me up. And she's just like, money for transit. She goes, well, you pick me up, Steve. You can pick me up. And I'm like, of course, I'll pick you up. For that second Sacred Ground, I think Rachel ended up picking up Adam Pearce. And Shannon didn't make it. That sucks. And then I would run into her here and there. It's wrestling, right? I get around in wrestling, and I'll see her. And, God, man, she's, to me, here's what's crazy about that Instagram fucking post. Sorry, let me run down. Match 3, Jake Christ against Josh Alexander. I thought it was a really good match, and Josh Alexander won. And that was Josh Alexander's open challenge. A bunch of stuff between Morrissey and Moose, and Morrissey and Moose are coming to some kind of agreement. And, match number 2 is Black Taurus and Crazy Steve against Falaba. No way. Crazy Steve and Black Taurus won. I really like that match. We had a recap of NWA Empower before that. And Tasha Steelz and Savannah Evans attack Rosemary and Havoc before Decay competes. First match was Rachel Ellering, Jordan Grace, and Taylor Wilde versus Caleb with a K, Tennille Dashwood, Madison Rain. And Wilde German suplexes Caleb for the win. So that's the show. Man, Daffney, man. Fuck. I normally don't get like this, but again, the first person we ever brought in, and there was no reason. I mean, the primary reason, of course, we thought, oh, maybe it'll be a draw. I mean, I was really new at running a promotion and all that kind of stuff. But the real reason I bring her in because she just had a light about her, man, and she was just cool. And I had an encounter with her, which she remembered, which is why she took the booking from this unknown motherfucker. Right? I had worked like an R&B security gig for WCW. And the spot in question was, we were, as security guys, we were supposed to go try to restrain Scott Steiner. Yeah, that's as awesome as it fucking sounds, right? So all the guys around me, and this is in like Denver, and so they're all really excited. They're like, this is going to be great. I'm going to take this great bump, and maybe he'll give me a move. And I'm just thinking to myself, Scott Steiner fucking wrecks dudes, and he's not very careful, especially at that stage in his career. I am just going to not get hurt. And so the guys are making fun of me for being a pussy, right? And Daffney was really concerned when she heard. She was like, don't let them talk you into anything you don't want to do. And I'm like, oh, nobody talks me into anything I don't want to do. She said she remembered that most of all. She remembered 2 things. One, she remembered me going like, nobody like forces me in a position I don't want to be in. And she said, I liked you right away. And then I go to the ring, and all these guys are getting murdered. And by the way, 2 of them had to end up getting carted to the hospital. One of them for getting thrown out of the ring because he threw him into the rope, the second rope, so hard he got injured off of that. Think about that. And then the other one just got poleaxed with some kind of stupid move. Right? Fuck. But all I did was I just went behind Scott Steiner, touched his back, and as soon as he turned around, I ran and took my own bumpo out of the ring. He didn't touch me. I touched him and then threw myself out. And so we got our checks, and there was still a little bit of the show left. And, I was a younger man then, but I snatch my check up, and I start walking out, and somebody goes, "Aren't you going to stay and watch the show?" All indignant, like I should stay and watch the show. One, a couple guys got carted to the hospital, so I was thinking of going to see them and make sure they were okay. But more than that, I was just trying to get the fuck out of there. At that point, I had I was going to open the school in Atlanta. I had no illusions that I was going to be a pro wrestler for a living. I never really did. And I just went, no, I'm not watching the rest of the show. I got my money and I'm leaving. And Kimberly Page, at the time DDP's wife, goes, "That's the smartest guy in the building." And Daffney relayed to me that later she and Kimberly talked. And Kimberly was like, "Ooh, how's that guy?" So Daphne remembered that when I booked her for that second show. And that second show, I mean, it was rough as far as the crowd goes, but that's not what we were talking about at all. It was just about how great it was. And yeah, Daphne was a sweetheart. And she and my girlfriend at the time, Morgan, really got along. And they worked together well in the ring. And then Daphne had all these visions of like, Morgan should go get trained more, and then she could really work. Because Morgan was really good looking and really flexible because she used to be like a ballerina and all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff indeed. I'll let you use your imagination there. So, but you look at the road that Daphne's in, and I mean, what haunting fucking words. Make sure my brain gets to Boston. My God. Because she knew that has brain damage. And she knows what they're going to find. How many concussions did she work through? And then once she got the concussion, how many more did she get just as easily? And I mean, with my really good friends, we ask these questions, especially about pro wrestling. For what? I'm always going to be part of pro wrestling. I'm always going to try to work in it. I'm always going to make money from it. And I'm always going to contribute more than it gives me. And that's the truth. But man, some days it's tough. And for all the ways people want to mitigate, Daphne got fucked up by the wrestling business. It doesn't mean that she didn't make choices of her own that didn't work out. It didn't mean that other stuff didn't factor in. But it does mean that there was a certain point in her life where she could have stepped away from wrestling. And I don't know if anybody who really puts their humanity before being a wrestling person, who wouldn't say she would have been better off not being a part of it. Especially after a certain point. Well, Shannon, you're gorgeous. You're wonderful. And you will always have a place. I don't even know what to call it. Not just my mind, not just in my memory. I have a great deal of affection. And I'll always have memories. And I'll have basically a part of Shannon that most people will never get to see. And that's beautiful and it's gorgeous. And it's one of the best memories I have of a very difficult year. I mean, that first year of trying to do shows and stuff, I mean, where I almost went home, where Morgan left, and I was in massive debt and having to claw my way out, and I'm in the shittiest apartment in College Park, and I'm eating free chicken samples to survive, and then I'm working at this art studio where, other employees know how bad it is for me, so they're slipping me granola bars, and I'm barely hanging on. But during that whole period, you know, uh, a show with Daffney that lost us money is one of my happiest memories. And it's really because of the person that she was. She was a lovely, lovely person. As far as wrestling stuff goes, I mean, the Impact show I'm looking at alone shows you the massive influence. And whenever I would see Daffney at like a Shimmer show or something like that, it was always nothing but warmth. I mean, that's the stories that I'm seeing from people about her. Just warmth and genuine. I mean, Jeff G. Bailey, who can be as tough as he can on anybody, he said she is effervescent, and he didn't use that word spuriously. He meant it. And he's right. She's effervescent. And while I'm watching Dynamite, I'm waiting to watch it on my laptop because I'm at my ex-wife's house. She doesn't have cable. So I'm trying to figure all this stuff out, and I get a notification because Daffney is one of the few people that I actually care about when they put up a live video on Instagram. So I watched that fucking video, and if I had known, to me it just seemed kind of dour, and I was, focused on how bad she looked. I hope people don't put up those pictures of her. Not because that wasn't who she was. I mean, it was. It obviously was at the end. And I mean, even in her addled mind, even at the lowest point of her life where she felt like dying was for the best. I mean, those words are amazing. Make sure my brain gets to Boston. The last noble act of a beautiful person. Goodbye, Shannon. And as long as I'm talking, fuck it. This thing's already 20. Fuck. A bunch of people will tell you if you need somebody to talk to, you need somebody who will pretty much understand, or at least relate, or at least listen without apparent judgment anyway, then I'm around and I will talk to you. If you want to talk to somebody who can give you a direction that perhaps I cannot, or a level of expertise that I do not have when it comes to matters of mental health, then talk to fucking Larry Goodman. He's one of the most decent men I know, and that's the field that he works in. And you will not tell him anything he hasn't heard before. And if he can't help you directly, he will point you in the direction of people that can. And he's a good man. I like to think that I'm a good man. I get people's simplistic notion that people should never feel that like they're alone. You can always count on me. And I think that's a lovely sentiment. And of course, I'm giving that sentiment as well. But more than that, it is a tragedy because I can only imagine how she felt. This is going to sound insane, but I'm glad that she had enough clarity to go, send my brain to Boston. Fuck.